Hey everyone, this is just a quick video just letting you know how my faction ended up doing in the recent cross-regional war. It was pretty exciting to me, this being the first war in this faction that was a cross-regional war. Being in a new faction is very interesting, but for being a new faction with new people, I think we did really well. We came up against, VV, Walkers, Outcasts, Cheese Factory, just a bunch of great factions, and we ended up coming in 5th. Which I think is pretty awesome. I ended up finishing with 425,000 points. I was pretty happy with that, especially because it was a shorter war period than other times. It was only, a day and 16 hours type of thing instead of almost 3 days as per usual. We usually start on Friday night or Friday afternoon in my case, but this time we started like Saturday night for me, and war went all the way into Monday, which I know didn't work out very well for a lot of people in, say, Australia, Asia, and Europe. So I know a lot of that just had to do with transfer stuff, so I understand why it happened, but at the same time, it was tough for a lot of people to get milestones, and in my opinion, the milestones weren't that great. Well, at least like the last milestone, it was raised to 200,000, but the 3K paw pins can't get you anything. I think the minimum should have been 8,000 paw pins, especially if that was the only reward there, because then you could have at least tried to get some trainers or tried to supplement it with 2K more paw pins in order to get armory tokens or whatever the other 2 bags are of gear and stuff. So I was a little disappointed with that last milestone. I am glad that there is a 200,000 milestone again, but at the same time, I wish it was more worthwhile. So now we're going to be looking at the war wheel because I actually do have a pull. Wayland here is my number 1 choice. He would go on both an offensive team as well as a defensive team. Ivy, I've mentioned this, I think she's the least useful character on this wheel, and I'm still not entirely sure why she's present on it. Elle is probably my 2nd choice. I would really like a Bide character. I think they're very useful. I think I could work her in onto a defensive team. Mia would also be very good. I like her reviving ability being both an active skill as well as a rush. To me, she's just a toon I could fit in a variety of locations. The governor, I don't really want him either. I don't find him to be that useful in most settings. I'm not exactly sure what I would use him for. Amber, at this point in the game, I think I have other toons I need to focus on, and although she's powerful and has follow-up, I also have a Rav already set up. Sheldon would be an interesting bleed toon to have. Again, I feel sorry for the people who use comic books in order to get him only to see him on the war wheel like a few days later. Elena is an amazing lacerator. She's someone I would definitely want. She's probably tied in about the 3rd place location for toons I want. And now, as I pull on 5-star Wayland, the toon that I am blessed to get is Elle. So I'm actually pretty happy with this. She's probably the 2nd best Bide character out there. The first one is Cam, so I'm hoping I might get lucky on those Falcon tokens for him, but if not, Elle is still a great toon, and now that I think about it, she might even be decent as a 5-star in 5-star arenas if people try to do that turn 1 wipeout team. Her Bide ability, assuming she has enough HP, could be devastating to the attacker. But she would definitely need a combination of defense and HP. I wouldn't add any AP onto her weapon, but I'm thinking if she has a bunch of HP and defense so that she can't be turn 1 wiped out, but there is 2,000 damage available so that her Bide does trigger, that could be a really effective way to prevent the enemy from killing me on the first turn. I already have Jeremiah in there for his Outlast, which helps, and a Mercer lead, but any other ways to deter the enemy from choosing me as their opponent means I get a few more trophies. So the only reason why I'm not thinking about making Elle a 6-star yet is because of how little gear I have. I'm trying to tier 4 my Arav, and obviously these are both yellow toons, so it would be hard to try and level both of them up at the same time, and Arav is obviously a stronger character. Meanwhile, I'm not exactly sure how I would fit Elle in on my defensive team. She would definitely be a strong character, because of Bide, obviously. Her active skill Pain splits and heals, and then also on her rush she can taunt the enemy while removing focus from them, so that forces them to attack her. So I kind of like the idea of a possible taunt loop. But this is the defensive team that I'm currently running, and I'm unsure who I would remove in order to put Elle into the team. I was also running this team with Blue Magna Shield on it in order to prevent the enemy from being able to attack Priya or Steve, and I found this defensive team to be fairly effective in war against a lot of factions, not against the top factions, but against enough of them. Just Mercer provided a lot of RNG for me. My Guardian Douglas here, or my Magna, whoever is in, provides a bit of cover and support. The Guardian Shield helps block attacks. Magna as a shield would help redirect attacks. Angel is in the team mainly for her exhaust ability, so this prevents people from using like Dr. Stevens, Gal, Michelle active skill, Arav, and so on. Now, the biggest change to my defensive team that I think people might pay attention to is that I'm not running a command toon, and the reason for that is because I don't want like my Priya to rush, say on the second turn, because if she does, she might end up triggering a payback toon that's used on the attacker's team, and I want to avoid that as much as possible. So by running her with Rampage and the double attack weapon, even off of her basic attacks, she has a decent chance of killing the enemy. Steve is in this team, not only because he fits behind the Mercer lead, and because he's like the only green toon in this team, so he just provides a bit of a trait difference. I also find him to be effective because on his rush he applies indirect damage, so the 2000 burn damage is actually pretty effective because it won't trigger that bide or that payback that people sometimes run on attack. And then, as I've mentioned in other videos, his weapon is pretty effective. The double attack has the ability to actually recover from confuse potentially, and his double attack is at 400% damage. So I like that this defensive team still has a bit of a defensive component, being like Douglas or Magna and even Angel, who can limit kind of what the opponent does, but then also has an offensive component that will not trigger the typical counters to the team. A somewhat reasonable change that I could make to the team would be if I took out Steve and I moved Angel over a spot so she's in line with Priya, but put Elle in line with Magna, for example. This could be effective for the team, just because if someone's using a toon that does collateral damage or even waste not, it would have the chance of actually triggering Elle. So by triggering Elle's bide ability, it would actually protect my team a little more. She would also be pain splitting with the toon that has the most amount of HP, which in this case would be Angel. And Angel's a pretty tanky toon on defense, so it's very unlikely that if Elle was triggered by an attack, like the pain splitting ability would hopefully save her but still trigger her bide, and I don't exactly have a healer on the team, so that's something like kind of food for thought. So I think I would have to make some other adjustments to this team to make sure that it actually works, because Elle does not really heal herself other than her active skill. But on her rush, if she's forcing toons to attack her, I need some way to buff both her defense and increase her HP over time. And even if she doesn't work behind Mercer, I could set her up in a decent tower defense team just by using Donnie as a lead. He heals, he gives AP, he stuns the enemy. His leadership skill is a true defensive lead with HP and defense. Dale is a great commander. We have S-Class Arav in here, and obviously he's very powerful. I could try to figure out a team where he could rush, say on the first or second turn. Elle would be in there for, again, her bide ability. Pain splitting would probably be with Kapoor in this case. Kapoor is kind of just a big tanky shield. He doesn't really do much for me, but he is useful just for kind of biding your time, no pun intended. So as you see, there are lots of different options where I could use Elle, and I'm even thinking potentially on an auto attack team in Faction Assault, so when she's leveled up, using her on attack could be useful just because her bide would be triggered often from Negan, for example. Not as often as, say, Payback if I had like Negan or Wayland, but the bide ability would be triggered a lot so long as I had her HP high enough, as well as had defensive buffs in place. Again, 3,000 damage isn't a lot of damage, so maybe not on specifically the Negan stage, but using her potentially against the other boss stages leading up to Negan, I think could be effective at least. So thank you everyone for watching and listening to my video, and thank you to whoever ended up tuning into my live stream the other day. It was a lot of fun kind of showing you guys how I was doing in war and kind of the different defensive teams that I was coming up against.